Welcome back. For this week's fly we're going to do, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there is actually a hook in this vise here. We're not going to do a big gaudy streamer this week. We're going to tie an emerging PMD. Can't really see it too well there, but once we get zoomed in you'll have a better idea of what we're going to be working with. To start this fly off, I already put my hooks away here. We're going to start off with a Daiichi 1160 on size 16. This is a clink hammer style hook, really good for emergers. And I normally run this, I don't run an emerger or a dry fly by itself, a typical catskill dry by itself very often. I usually fish both of them at the same time. I'll just tie a tag off and then I'll have this one trailing the catskill. But it's a very effective pattern, very easy to track in the water. Get some of that out of the way. But to start this thing off, we're going to go with our post. We're going to use some Snowshoe Rabbit. This is just in, I believe this is cream or natural. I want to say that it's cream, but either way it's not really critical on which color you use for your post. This one's pretty easy to track, but what I'll do is I'll take this and cut a little clump off, and then I turn it upside down, tie it in from the tips, and leave the tips on there. This is going to create the natural taper that you want as you tie this on the rest of the way down. Get some stuff out of my way here. You can see how we're already starting to form this taper without doing anything really except tying over excess material. We'll just clip that, get it out of our way, and then right where, if you draw a parallel line, let me turn it this way so you can see, a parallel line from the point of your hook back, I'll take and start my thread just, I don't know, maybe an eighth of an inch above that parallel line, and that's where my body material is going to start. I don't throw tails or shucks on this because it honestly defeats the purpose of having this style of hook. You want everything from your post down to puncture the surface film and ride lower than your catskill will. If you go throwing like a trailing shuck like Z-Lawn or something like that, something similar on there to imitate the nymphal shuck leaving, you're going to wind up throwing your the way your fly floats. You're going to throw that off a little bit by throwing that extra material on there. You just want it to hit the water and everything else to be below the surface. Got a little sparse on this, but it'll serve its purpose. I like to have just a little bit more there, but it's a little battle. I mean, if you go and beef this up too much, then you're going to mess your taper up, and it's just a constant battle. But anyhow, stand your post up with a couple wraps right in front, and then run 5 or 6 wraps up your post, and you're going to see we're going to tie our hackle in to that, and I'll explain a little bit further once we get to that point. Let me just kind of build a little dam of thread up right in front of this so it kind of sits up at a 90 how we want it. It strengthens our post a little bit, and then I'll just run my thread right back down to my starting point. For our body on this one, we're going to use PMD colored turkey bite quills. Now what we'll do with this, and I'll zoom out a touch so I can explain this a little better, but you will just take one strand, and if they'll separate for me, there we go, So you'll take your one strand. Now this is the best way that I can explain this in the simplest terms. You can see from where you peel this off of your feather, you have this white tag sticking out. What you'll do is take and you'll turn your strand upside down, and that white is going to be facing you as the fly tire. That's how you want to tie this in. It's going to give you a really nice segmented body. You can tie it in the opposite way, but it doesn't fill out as much. Your bar will be on the opposite side, and it'll still give you good segmentation, but it doesn't look near as good to me. This segmentation, when you tie it in this way, it just kind of stands out. Everything, it just looks a lot better, and you'll see what I mean as we start wrapping this. And get zoomed in a little bit further there. Before I start to wrap this, I'm going to take just a dab of Zap. Don't put a ton on here. Just touch it, just enough to where it's going to hold your material in place, but not so much to where it's going to be coming out of the seams as you're wrapping this. And you'll take your Hackle pliers and grab these, and then just start making your wraps, one in front of the other. Go real slow. Take your time with this. If you wind up putting too much tension on it, it's very easy to pull these out, and they're just going to frustrate you, and you have to go back and tie them in again and start all over. But you can see the segmentation that we're getting with this. You can see how it's kind of giving us that nice segmented natural look. I'm going to try and squeeze out one more wrap here without gluing my finger to the hook. And there we have it. Now you'll just go right in front of this and tie it off, and your body's set for this. What I will say about this, like I was saying, I run a catskill or a traditional dry fly and this at the same time. If you're fishing off size 14 catskill, tie this in a 16. And I know 14 PMDs aren't the most popular in the world. That's on the big side of the PMDs. But I just did it because a 16 is easier to see on camera than an 18 or smaller. But they just seem to be closer in size. The 14 Daiichi dry fly hook and then the 16 1160s seem to be just a little bit closer in size. Next up, we're going to take, this is just a, what do we got here? A light ginger whiting 100 pack. Very versatile. And if you're tying a lot of flies at once, like production tying or anything like that, it's a very good value too. But dry fly Hackle has come so far in recent years that it's almost tough to get a bad one. What I'll do next is I'll take my Hackle stem and I'm tying this in upside down. I'll explain that further when we go wrapping it. But see how I have a little bit of a tag? I'm leaving excess of a tag right there where there is no material, there are no feathers. I'm going to come right in front of this and tie this off. And I'll get my fingers out of the way here in a second. Now, the reason I left that excess is because I want to stand my fiber up and tie this to my post. So we're going right to the post here with our Hackle. And this one's really long, it's going to kind of get in the way, but we'll make do. should have cut it down just a little bit. But you'll stand that right up just like that. And before I start, I want to make sure, okay, it's going to go the way I want it to. Before we go and wrap our hackle, we're going to take just some PMD superfine dubbing, and less is more when it comes to working with dubbing. And you'll just spin a nice tight rope. You can see how little that we're using right there. I mean, once I spin it, it almost disappears, but it still gives you the color that you want, but it's not real bulky. That's one mistake that a lot of folks will make when they're doing dry flies. Their bodies wind up looking like footballs because they use entirely too much dubbing. Just very, very sparse with this stuff. Like I said, less is more. Alright, you can just spin a nice tight rope there. Now you start working your way and come right in front of this and just figure 8 right next to your post. Run it to your eye, and we're a little bit shy on dubbing. We'll take a little bit more here. It's easier to add to it than it is to subtract, so if you're going to err on the short side. You'll be able to tell if you have too much dubbing when you're spinning your rope. And let's get a good view of this here. If you have excess material kicking off to the side looking like a dog leg or something like that, good indication that you have too much material. You can back it off some. And then we'll just go right here and then bring your thread on the camera side of your hook. Now, the reason we tied this in upside down is because when we wrap this, I want my fibers facing up. If they're facing down, for one, it's not going to allow your fly to sink as far into the surface film, and for two, it's really easy to trap this stuff if it's facing down. If it's facing up, it's just a lot cleaner, a lot easier to work with. And then you'll start at the top and work your way to the bottom. 3-4 wraps is about all you need. I like these pretty sparse too. And then I'll just take my thread and I'll work it right underneath all my fibers. Kind of pull a little bit tighter and we'll tie this off. This thread, by the way, is a GSP 50. I use that for all of my dry flies. Really easy to work with. Really clean, doesn't build a lot of bulk. You can see there's our hackle fibers, and this is a little bit smaller. I probably could have went one size up on this. I have a 12. I probably could have went with a 10 or the next size up for my hackle. I just like them to be a little bit longer on my parachutes, and then on my catskills I like them to be a lot shorter, and I'll explain that on the next video. But we're essentially done right here with this fly. What we're going to do is just whip finish this off now. And let me see if I can find my tool. There it is. I like to use the whip finish tool for my dries. I just have a little bit more accuracy with it, and I don't trap as many fibers. But you can see when we're whip finishing this, I just go right around the post. And I'll try and do this. Let me see here. There's a couple hairs that are out of place. I'll trim in a second, but now I have the vise positioned a little bit better so the camera can see it, but it's a little bit awkward for me, so hopefully I don't mess this up. But you can see we're going right underneath everything. We're not trapping any hairs, and that's it. We'll cut our thread, go back and get these 2 or 3 hairs that are out of place. And where are they at? That will do it. Like I said, got a little bit sparse on my post. I like them to be a little bit thicker, but it's a balance between a good thick post and too thick on your body when you build your bulk with that. But that is your click hammer style PMD. If there are any questions on this fly, you need me to repeat any steps, just shoot them to me in the comments. I'll get back to you as quick as I can, maybe do another video, whatever we need. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next fly.